This is called In Search of Breakfast. It was the very best time of day in the 100-acre wood, which is the same as saying it was the very beginning of the day when the sun was just easing itself up over the horizon. It was the time when a certain bear of very little brain typically rolled out of bed to celebrate the new morning with a very large breakfast. But this wasn't to be a typical morning at Winnie the Pooh's house. Instead of the friendly rattle of honey pots and hungry smacking noises, the only sound to be heard was a long, shivering sigh, followed immediately by a most forlorn, "Oh, bother." Pooh was sitting at the edge of his bed, swinging his feet aimlessly and looking terribly sad. He looked as if not even the thought of breakfast would cheer him up. In fact, when the thought of his favorite time of day for a small smackerel of something sweet to eat did occur to him, he wrinkled up his forehead even more and swung his feet around a bit nervously and said very loudly, "Oh, bother, bother." Some serious thinking had to be done about breakfast, and Pooh knew there wasn't enough room inside for it to take place properly. He hopped off the bed and began to dress as quickly as he could. In no time at all, Pooh was stomping through the 100-acre wood in no particular direction, as fast as his short legs could carry him. Realizing finally that thinking was done much more constructively when seated comfortably than at a full run, and all out of breath, Pooh plopped himself down on a convenient stump and tried to look as serious as it was possible for him to look for as long as it was possible for him to do so. He managed this up for several seconds at a time, hoping that the more he looked as if he were having an idea, the more likely it would be that one might come along and take root. But instead of an idea, Tigger happened along. He reacted with dismay at the uncharacteristic look of concentration on Pooh's face. "Pooh boy," Tigger cried, with great concern in his voice, "what's the matter? Thorn in your paw, ache in your tooth, cramp in your cramper?" Pooh tried desperately to hang on to a serious expression as he answered, "No, Tigger, it's nothing like that. Why do you ask?" "I'm asking 'cause you look like you lost your very best friend," Tigger said. "And I know that's impossible 'cause I'm standing right next to you the last time I looked." Pooh smiled. "You were still standing there the last time I looked too," he said. Then he sighed as he realized that all his efforts at thoughtfulness had disappeared along with his frown. "Then what are we waiting for?" shouted Tigger with delight. "It's time for breakfast. Let's go do some what Pooh Bears and Tiggers do best and snarf down a few smackerels." "I can't," Pooh said very quietly that Tigger almost didn't hear him. "Winnie the Pooh can't have breakfast?" Tigger responded amazed. "Why not?" "Because breakfast is what is eaten after a night's sleep," Pooh explained sadly, "and I haven't had the sleep yet." "I think you'd better tell me what's going on, Pooh," Tigger said solemnly. "Well," Pooh began, thinking back, "it was a soft and cozy night. My bed was quite comfortable, and I just had my midnight smackerel, so there was no rumbly in my tumbly to keep me awake." "So what happened?" Tigger wanted to know. "Did some sort of noisy type noise keep you awake? Creaking faucets or dripping floors?" "No," replied Pooh thoughtfully. "It was quiet. It was the quiet I listened to all night long. There seemed to be so very much of it." "Wow," Tigger said. "I don't think I've ever heard a bedtime story. I don't think I'd ever heard my bedtime story if all the quiet was hanging around me." "Bedtime story?" said Pooh, suddenly sitting up very straight. "I didn't hear a bedtime story." "Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo!" exclaimed Tigger triumphantly. "No wonder you're staying awake. How can anyone go to sleep without a bedtime story?" "You're right, Tigger," said Pooh, laughing with relief. Then, all at once, the smile faded from his face. Does that mean I have to wait until bedtime tonight for a story before I can fall asleep and have today's breakfast? Tomorrow? Pooh didn't want to think about being behind a breakfast every morning from that day on. Then he realized that if he couldn't have today's breakfast until tomorrow, today's lunch and dinner would have to be put off as well. The thought was almost more than his hungry tummy could stand. Nah, Tigger assured. A bedtime story is good anytime. You just go to bed. So that must mean breakfast is a good anytime you wake up. Pooh nodded understandingly. Now all I have to do is find one so I can have the other. Tigger threw his arm affectionately around Pooh's shoulders. Relax, Pooh boy, he told him. I got a doozy of a story for you. And that's the end of the first story.